Wonderful. Thank you. Isabel.
Hello, welcome. So I'm Isabel. I graduated in the class of 2005. My family is in Plymouth, and from there I commuted to Falmouth Academy in ninth grade, and then went to Simmons College and studied business management. I feel like the more I went away from Waldorf in higher education, the more I sought out my Waldorf friends and Waldorf activities. And through my appreciation of the community of Waldorf, I began to travel. And as I traveled, I sought out different Waldorf schools. So I was able to work and live in Scotland, connected to a Waldorf school, as well as in Maui, and most recently out in Salt Lake City, Utah. And I found myself traveling to these places and getting more and more immersed in Waldorf, and then ultimately becoming a Waldorf teacher. And present day, I'm a first grade Waldorf teacher at Maine Coast Waldorf School. And I feel like my the essence of who I am and my willingness to try and go new places and be around new people really stems from my feeling of my ability to meet people and have conversations and get curious and really share a connection with them and build relationships. So I have really appreciated this relational element that Waldorf has brought to me.
Thank you. Annie.
Hi, thank you. So I'm currently the Director of Customer Experience at Echo, which is a venture-backed health tech company in Berkeley, California. And we provide digital stethoscopes to clinicians to improve the quality of and access to cardiac care worldwide. I lead a team of customer experience associates that provide technical customer support to our clinicians working on the front lines, many of them working on the front lines of COVID right now. So a little bit about how I got to where I am today. I was a Waldorf school kiddo from elementary school through 6th grade and absolutely loved it. And then moved on to Falmouth Academy in 7th grade and then went to Colorado College. After graduating, I moved out to San Francisco and worked for a short time in the sustainable fashion industry. And then I went into sustainable home cleaning and beauty products. And then I moved to health and medical work as well. So kind of all over the place, but it's been a really interesting and fun journey. I think speaking to what Waldorf gave me in just a few words here is really the ability to think and to adapt and to be really present and dive into whatever I'm doing. And I think I take opportunities when they come to me and I really dive in fully. Intellectually, emotionally, I just am 100% there. And I think that's something Waldorf really fosters in young kids. And I really am grateful for that.
Thank you. Peter.
Hi there. Thanks for having me, and so great to see all of you, even if it's virtually. It seems like, we're making the most of it despite our current predicament. I graduated, spent 8 years at Waldorf, graduated in 01, like my sister went to Northfield Mount Herman for high school. Felt fully prepared when I got there, and was a diverse student that was well-rounded and could speak before large groups, but also, knew how to play several instruments and knew how to write and knew French, and was a well-rounded student. Went to DC to Catholic University, into NYU for my master's. I did a quick stint with John McCain when he ran for president, and then had about 10 years in law enforcement, both at the FBI and the NYPD. And I'm now at a specialized crisis communications firm called Reeve-Mark, based in New York. But as the rest of the world goes, we're all remote for the moment. But great to see you all, and look forward to getting into some substantive questions.
Liz, I don't see you, but I know you're here.
Yeah.
There you are.
Hi there. I'm Peter's sister. I graduated 2 years behind Pete. We went to the Waldorf, the Waldorf school from kindergarten through 8th grade. I also went to Northfield Mount Herman. From Northfield, went to the University of Pennsylvania, and had a trajectory that landed me in New York. In executive search, I quit my job with my twin sister. We both decided to pursue our love of rowing and tried to make the Olympic team. After that, I landed in Boston. I worked for a global communications agency trying to work on the Boston 2024 Olympic bid. I figured if I couldn't get there myself, I wanted to help bring it to Boston. That failed as well, but learned a lot along the way. I am now, for the last 3.5 years, have been in development and alumni relations for Northfield Mount Herman. I live in the western part of Massachusetts. Interestingly enough, it's actually been in coming back to NMH, which I thought was the most formative 4 years of my life, that I have come to realize that actually Waldorf was truly the catalyst of, I think, the way in which I see the world, and more importantly, maybe the way in which I see myself. I have some wonderful close friends that I stay in touch with, and we all seem to have a very clear sense of self. And we have just found a way to find our own drumbeat. And I think my ability and willingness and bravery to quit my job is sort of the essence of that. I didn't take it in a sort of cavalier moment in time. It was really through deep reflection that I had that sort of strength and just being brave enough to do that, that I attribute to Waldorf and navigating the undulations of life.
Thank you. Kira.
So right now I am a student at Mitchell College. I'm a sophomore. I'm studying marine biology. Originally, I graduated in 2015 and then went on to a very hard IB school, but since I had learning disabilities then, I was able to go on to another program that expanded my skill set, and for that I was able to even graduate that very hard IB school, but that also helped me a lot in being able to get me to where I'd be able to be accepted into a lot of schools that also have programs for learning disabilities. But my plan is to definitely use my skills that I learned at my original schools as well as Waldorf, and to be able to go out and travel and to be able to find some really good jobs that I'd be able to do in my career. But I think definitely a lot of the skills that I took from Waldorf, I'm still able to use and I'm definitely able to use in the future, as well as like public speaking, being able to do projects, but also being very critical and especially doing like homework and knowing what I want to get done and what I want to do. A lot of those things have definitely helped. I started back when I was actually in preschool and then graduated when I was in 8th grade. So I had a lot of that experience, and I feel like I can definitely take that on and be able to do whatever I want to do.
Thank you, Kira. So just for explanation, and then I'll let them introduce themselves. The last two are my own children, and two of my children, and I brought them on because they both had Waldorf High School as well. So just to bring in a little bit of that perspective, because we never know what road life is going to take us in. And so just in case any of you end up out of state, not that we're hoping that happens whatsoever, but if that does, this gives you a little bit of the high school perspective as well. So Sam, do you want to introduce?
Hey all. I am a Waldorf lifer, I suppose. I was homeschooled by my beautiful mother here, first through 8th grade, and then went to the Washington Waldorf School in Bethesda, Maryland, for high school. And, well, I'll get back to that. So from there on, I went to college and majored in mass communications, and now I'm graduated just this May, and I started off the summer with a job. I was very lucky. I felt very lucky, given that most of my peers were graduating with debt and nothing else. But I was working on a lobster boat, which was all fine and dandy until I started getting too seasick to continue, which was heartbreaking. And so now I am kind of just working for myself. I'm commercial clamming right now, which is a great opportunity to just get out and be by myself and get to know the local ducks. Throughout college, I worked on fishing boats, but I also did some handyman business on the side over breaks, and just kind of expanded my tool set, I suppose. And now I'll get back to my foundations in Waldorf, and I think both the Waldorf curriculum and the homeschooling gave me the opportunity to kind of figure out what had the freedom to focus on things that were more personally interesting to me. And I had a lot more freedom to really work with my hands and do things that are physical. I have a harder time, even on Zoom right now, my focus and my attention is more easily spent on things that are in front of me that I can handle and I can touch and can do. And Waldorf really let me grow through that, because throughout the high school experience, I took, I guess, 2 different art classes a year, 8 art classes, and from stone carving to basket weaving to watercolor painting, oil painting, all kinds of things. I took a blacksmithing class, and those all contribute to a holistic education that left me a well-rounded and capable person. And I think that has really been a benefit to me when it comes to relating to others, and also to being useful to employers. So I guess that's enough for now. Thank you.
And I'm Sophie. Same story as Sam. We went to a Waldorf kindergarten in Silver Spring, Maryland, just outside DC, that part of Maryland. I guess we did preschool, kindergarten, or all the early childhood stuff, and then kindergarten, and then we were homeschooled the Waldorf way through 8th grade, and then I also went to the Washington Waldorf School for high school. And right now I'm a junior at Principia College, which is just outside St. Louis, and I am double majoring in political science and music studies, and aiming to be a journalist. So that's kind of my focus right now. I interned at the Christian Science Monitor last summer, based in Boston, but remotely, as I'm sure everyone was working last summer. And yeah, similar to, I guess, what many people have said, one of my biggest takeaways, I love Waldorf education. I've thought about it a lot, and I've gotten a lot of opportunities to talk about it because so many of my professors are really aware of Waldorf education, which surprised me. And one thing I noticed when I was more comfortable writing and researching when I got to freshman year than a lot of my peers were. And that ended up sparking some conversations with professors about Waldorf education, because it really, the way everything in the curriculum is so intentionally laid out to meet you right where you are, and to develop you in a really cumulative way. You circle back to things in a more sophisticated way each time you revisit them. And that's kind of how I think. I am a verbal processor, as you might be able to tell, but I also really like to go in depth on things. And so Waldorf English classes, I can draw a straight line from my capacity for empathy to Waldorf English classes, and then just the blacksmithing and the basket weaving and this, the sports, and just the fact
Copper
that
work.
copper, yeah, that was kind of the bane of my existence at the time, but I'm grateful for it now. But all of the fact that as a Waldorf student, you're kind of seen by your teachers as capable of giving everything a try, I think helps instill kind of a confidence that comes in very handy later in life when you're in a less protected environment, but still have the opportunity to try new things and establish yourself in new ways. So
Good. I think actually all of the main points, I mean, I just keep hearing a lot of the same threads through everyone's experience in a slightly different way. And we'll just take the rest of our time to expand on some of these ideas. And so there are so many questions we could ask. I was really trying to cover as much broad territory and leave as much flexibility for all the alums to really bring to you their experience. So I've got a few questions which I'll throw out, and hopefully that will open up some new avenues of conversation. The first thing I wanted to hear about, because in my conversations with these individuals, these themes were really coming through, but I think it's really interesting to think about how the Waldorf years, whether they happened in the really early years. I mean, we've got, the two who went through high school. Most of you went through 8th grade, but a few of you jumped off even before then, before a lot of us probably think that people would have memories from. And yet it was really interesting for me to hear from you all, because you absolutely did. Or you had maybe not clear specific memories, but just this really strong feeling of the foundation of your life, of your education, but really your life. So I'm curious to hear how your Waldorf years, a little bit more about how your Waldorf years really formed your sense of self and your sense of identity. And Liz was talking a little bit about that in her introduction, and Anna, you had a lot to say about this in our conversation last week. And if you could just start us off, and then everyone can jump in as they wish, but if you could just talk a little bit about that.
I didn't know if you were speaking to Liz or me. Would you like me to go ahead?
Sorry. Yeah, if you can just start us off. And I was just saying, Liz brought up some of that in the introduction, but you had a lot to say about it too. And if you could talk a little bit about that, and then everyone else can jump in as they wish.
Yeah, of course. I think for me, the most powerful thing that has stood out from my early years at Waldorf that has carried me through to now is that Waldorf creates a sense of safety and security and belonging that I think so many people are lacking, especially now in our society, especially kids. So for, thinking back to that kind of cocoon that kind of wrapped itself around us as kids, I think that for me was so impactful early on. I think it started as feeling really safe in Waldorf, and over the years it integrated into feeling safe in myself and believing in myself. And I know this is a string we've heard a couple times, but it gave me the confidence to take risks and to try new things and to be really adaptable and to go into industries that really intimidated me previously professionally, and going in and just taking that risk and jumping in fully and learning that I'm safe in myself, I'm safe in this world, and I can find safety and purpose in any job that I'm looking for and looking to grow in. I think that's been the most impactful for me. And I'd love to hear how other people have felt that. But Kristen, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted me to speak to, but that for me has been the biggest theme.
I could speak to that. Is that okay?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I left in 5th grade, which maybe seems younger to you, but to me it felt like it felt like my fundamental formation of myself, because I had a total of 8 years, including early childhood, at the school. So it's the longest form of one type of education I've ever received. And by the time I left, even in 5th grade, I was completely, I had such an intense confidence in myself. And when I entered a classroom full of cliques and people who were really like doing the girl things and the boy things, I was able to cross all of those lines. I was friends with everybody. I was in chess club. I was on the ball team. I was also knitting sweaters and doing the floral arrangement, elective. And then that continued through high school when things were very intense with cliques. Again, I never felt beholden to any of that. And I feel like that was very much the community that was fostered with just starting with my tiny identity in Waldorf that grew into the strong kernel of what I wanted to manifest wherever I went, and to figure out those interpersonal human relationships in a way that was more dynamic and more interesting than what somebody might appear to be good at or not good at. And I feel like, I mentioned this in our group last time, and I'll just speak to it again. The act, for example, of knitting a sweater or doing something tremendous like that in a young grade, like second grade. It's easy to just say, oh, that's cool, you knit a sweater, but it's actually really profound for a child to make something that they can wear and to accomplish an entire task from beginning to end. And I feel like these small things that were put together that I didn't even notice as a child were what were weaving together the kind of dense self-confidence that I left with.
I love that. Liz, do you want to say a little bit more? Yeah.
Sure.
Great.
Yeah. I think that one thing that really always stood with me, or that I took away from Waldorf, was how much presentation is built into the curriculum. And I think now, certainly with social media, our world is so different, and presenting, I think, takes on a different connotation. There's sort of this like acting and this facade that is. But I think what's really powerful about Waldorf is that when you walk into the classroom, you shake your teacher's hand. And I remember being told that I wasn't looking the teacher in the eye when I shook their hand, and coming in and out of the classroom doing that at the beginning and end of the day. The poems that we recite, the plays. I know my brother speaks to this a lot, but the confidence that he and I both have to be in front of many, many people, public speaking, and to both have the confidence to get up there, but then to be able to communicate what you want to say, I think is something that is built in at such a young age that you don't even know it's becoming part of you. For me, that served me tremendously in my work professionally. But I think it is also allows you to, what Annie was saying, is connect with who you are, and maybe explore that in a way that is less connected with what society thinks you might or should be, and more connected with what are the things that I enjoy, what are the things that that bring fulfillment, and then how do you find your place in the world, given that. And I think Sam, you're just at the beginning of that journey. Certainly my path took lots of twists and turns and is really unorganic, or is organic. And then I'll just share that, through COVID, some of my Waldorf friends, we now have a biweekly call together. And I can say that there is a unique thread with my peers that went to Waldorf, that we are all doing really unique things, but really excelling in that space, because I think it's deeply connected to who we are, what we love, and we haven't been afraid to try and find that cross section.
Mm-hmm. I really resonate with everything that's been said about finding a sense of self. And I wanted to add that I also, through Waldorf, because when we were homeschooled, we were also part of a Waldorf co-op. So we did a lot with other students and other Waldorf students. And then through high school as well, what I think, in addition to that, to some kind of finding like almost my own roots and establishing my sense of self, I also learned a lot about myself in a group. And I think that there's something both very challenging at times, but also very rewarding about moving through years, but also through every class within a year with the same group of students, with, you know, maybe a few in high school. Yeah, overall, the same group of students. And that can be really challenging, especially when relationships come up, especially toward, I mean, I experienced in high school, like, there were some people there were relationships in our class where people did not want to spend time together, but you didn't have a choice, and teachers had the time with us to help us navigate that in like an age appropriate way. And that's something that's come in so handy since then. And learning that self-confidence through just like knitting a sweater and all the, you know, accomplishing tasks and pushing bounds for myself, but then also learning how to be in a group, when to stand up, when to sit down, you know, um, when to assert myself and when to not. And that has been one of, I guess, that personal development has been so valuable that came out of Waldorf.
I might add just one little point here. This is interesting, the emphasis on the ability to speak and to feel confident. And I will say that it is not, built into Waldorf education is not this goal of putting the individual forward to, you know, some schools and some educational systems are really working on the individual in that very self-conscious way from an early age, teaching you how to speak or putting you forward. Um, for those who are new to this journey, Waldorf education is very focused on the community and the whole. So I think that what's behind this is this emphasis on being interwoven. And actually, if you think about it, there's just such strength in that feeling of being part of something. And I think perhaps, and maybe one of you can expound on this if this makes sense to you, that this is what gave you this strength as an individual. So when the children are young, we're not pushing them forward like you stand ahead of everybody and kind of showcase yourself. That's not at all the posture. But when you do have that layer upon layer of growth with others, I think it does in fact yield what Liz was talking about and others, that the individual ends up feeling quite strong and capable. So it's kind of an interesting slow growth trajectory, if you will, but it operates that way.
Kristen, Isabel might be able to speak to that because she was sharing a little bit about that from teaching and just sort of the curriculum. I don't know, Isabel, if you...
What's coming to my mind in relation to this question is this element of the teacher really seeing your children and giving them the space to be themselves, and also holding a curriculum, but being able to cater the lesson to meet their students in that class. And a lot of it is brought, and one way it is brought is through storytelling and through the mood of the story and how the story is brought. A teacher can really resonate or connect to a child. And I do think it's in this indirect way that the child is like, oh, he or she sees me. And I remember receiving a poem from my 8th grade teacher, Mr. O'Gara, and he had written a poem of each of us who graduated. And as soon as we heard the poem for each student, we were like, whoa, that was so spot on. And I have this over my bed at my parents' house. And every time I read it, I'm like, how did he, like, it's incredible to me that I was so seen as a child. And that's what I really hope to bring to my students. And I think it's really at the core of many Waldorf teachers.
Thank you. That's a great point. Thank you for sharing that. Do you all feel that Waldorf education is a rigorous education and a complete education? And how did it prepare you for high school? This is a question a lot of parents wonder about. Kira, you were very articulate about this, and if you could just kind of start us off with some ideas on that.
Yeah, so during the times of when I was at Waldorf, it wasn't very rigorous to me. It was very easy for me to be able to catch on what I was learning, but also get that experience that sometimes it's hard to get from a lot of other schools. I feel like that through curriculum, others can definitely learn a lot and be able to learn in a sort of different way and different education where it gets explained. And at that point, they're able to take that on. Definitely through my years, I've learned how to socialize. I've learned the curriculum. I've learned how to do school and be able to take that and beyond, especially through high school. A lot of that curriculum was the same, but I had that self confidence that I got from Waldorf that I was able to be able to take through high school and be able to get through my first year of college, which was very, very, very hard, but definitely through my years, I've learned a lot of confidence, especially a lot of teachers who've seen me as someone who is very positive and willing to go forward and get a lot of stuff done, especially get ahead. Like for example, when I was actually on one of the dance teams during the time of when I was in like fifth, sixth grade, I was actually one of the captains of the sword dance team, and at that point, I felt like I had the courage to just be able to get through that, and I felt like it was the same thing of being able to move on from like Waldorf in high school and be able to get through that and be able to be a leader and be able to see that others that I can be the leader that they can also follow as well as, and beyond. And so they can see that I am very up forward and wanting to get stuff done. And especially I feel like that would be good for a job of where you see that person who's able to get stuff done and as well as probably maybe see a very good future. And I feel like I've definitely gotten through a lot of that, especially with Waldorf, and the curriculum was absolutely great for me, and I feel like it will be really good for others where they actually.
Thank you. Peter, this is making me think of something that you said. You were talking about your learning style as a young learner, and obviously you've gone on to.
Learn and
Oh, she's still talking. Sorry, Kira, I didn't mean to cut you off. You were talking about the kind of learner that you were as a younger boy, and obviously you've gone on to excel in very conventional settings. So I'm just wondering if you could share a little bit about that your learning style. You were saying something about if you'd been in a more conventional setting that you might not have excelled as a boy.
Yeah, I'll use a metaphor maybe to describe it, and I'm happy to come back and go into a bit more detail. But we left as a triple threat, player, right? We could dribble, we could pass, we could shoot, right? If you're a basketball fan, you know those three tools. We were very well-rounded students. Maybe I wasn't as, I didn't super excel in one vertical, but I knew how to do math, I knew how to read, I knew how to draw, I knew how to speak French, Latin, play three instruments, was involved in sports. I knew how to put on several Shakespearean plays and sing a cappella. And, you just could do, it was the totality of the experience. So, you knew about the Greek gods and also about details of the founding of our republic, right? Which seemed to be, those details seem to be more pertinent now than ever. So, you could get by in any space, in any room. You could have a bit of knowledge in just about, not in everything, but in a lot of different spaces, and you could carry a conversation anywhere or talk to just about anyone about anything at really any point in time with little or no preparation. So I think that's helped along the way, and a lot of those first conversations are just about building rapport and finding some common ground and getting people to feel comfortable with you. So anyways, I think that, Waldorf has certainly prepared me and others I know for that journey.
This kind of Sam, just one second, then jump in. This kind of dovetails what you just said into one of my other questions, which is Waldorf Education's broad approach and this framework of that you've probably all heard: head, heart, hand. This picture of the whole person being equally brought out, and I'm just wondering if we could go beyond that a little bit and talk about how that is helpful in a competitive marketplace, and how this fits into this age of specialization that we seem to be in.
Mind if I go? I think that that Waldorf is a comprehensive and holistic curriculum. I mentioned all of the different art classes that I took, and we've heard about we learned about the foundations of our republic, and we learned about just funny, obscure topics. Maybe not even obscure, but things that aren't the common in a common curriculum, let's say. And I'll use a story here that I when I was on the college search, I visited a school, and the admissions counselor there had a story to basically say that, okay, your grandfather had a career and he had one job for his entire career. He used his grandfather as an example, saying his grandfather was a cooper. And he said, now probably most of you don't know what this means, but anyone knows what it means. So I raised my hand. I was the only person in the room that knew that a cooper was a barrel maker. And maybe that's not the most useful piece of information nowadays. And his point was that when we get into the job market, my cohort, we're going to have, I think he said 6 to 8 different careers that's an aside, but maybe it's not super important that I know what a cooper is. That's not the most radical piece of information, but it made me stand out. It made me a special person in that room of people. And then he remembered me the second time that I listened to him talk and raised my hand again. So yeah, I think that the broad kind of comprehensive attack that Waldorf takes is empowering rather than leaving you short-handed. I think that instead of taking one, like early on identifying something that you're interested in or good at, and really focusing on that, I think that the Waldorf approach gives you empowers you to take whatever path that works and that comes your way, whichever one of those 8 careers comes your way at what time, you're ready for it. And I don't think that's the case. I'll real quickly share another story that I think is pertinent here. I had actually when I was homeschooled, we had a math teacher come in for 8th grade, and brilliant man, absolutely brilliant mathematician, went to Harvard and got a math degree, and along with that, $250,000 worth of debt. And
physics. I mean, he had a hard degree, physics.
Okay, well, he was good at math, but he was a smart guy, and he'd been through a magnet program at a STEM school in our area, and he graduated incredibly brilliant in this one area, and he's now going back to school to become a gym teacher. And he's now got all of this debt, and he's got a very specific skill set that he can't apply in a public school gym. And that's a specific instance for sure, but I think that kind of helps me clarify my point in my head. So yeah, that's my thoughts.
I think to build on what you just said about that our generation will likely have, many different jobs and career paths. I'm 28 years old, and I've already worked in 3 different, very distinct industries. And I really give credit to Waldorf. I think, not to repeat what everyone said, but really I think that the piece about confidence, the piece about being an independent thinker, being creative, being able to show up fully, head, heart, hand, like to work every day, I think it really makes for leaders too. And like you said, Kristen, earlier, it's not to stand out, it's to lift up. And I am a leader not because I like to be in the spotlight, but because I love to work on a team and have people around me all lift each other up and watch them grow, and to cultivate phenomenal people in the workplace. And I really feel that rooted deeply, deeply in Waldorf.
Annie, I so agree. And I think that what the world needs is problem solvers, and really creative thinkers. And I think that problems are solved when you bring a lot of diverse people and from various parts of our world, from political thought to how people grew up around a table, and you can engage with many different people. And I think that Sophie, you were talking about this in your opening, and I was just like, yes, it's the ability that we understand we move as a collective in a Waldorf education, and that does not mean you get along every day, but it means that you learn how to work together. And I think that that peer-to-peer relational learning, whether you're the one that's maybe the slowest one in the class to learn something and a peer is helping you to teach you and work through something, or then in the next class that day, maybe you become sort of that peer-to-peer teacher. You become, I think, a more empathic individual. And I think, Annie, to your point, absolutely, it is to lift others up and to understand how do you connect so that we can all grow together, and that it's not zero sum, but it's a collective.
Very nice. Something that along that thread, this just occurred to me. I'm wondering if any of you, if this resonates with you. Because of this focus on the social fabric and the connectivity to one's community, and the fact that you do tend to go through, of course people do come and go, but that you have this core, and that a teacher is working frequently with you for several years, sometimes many years, but certainly more than one. One thing I did notice with our children is that you would, and actually I've seen this teaching as well now that I think about it, but sometimes you're in a social situation and there's someone that you really don't resonate with, and maybe they're even just not exhibiting most lovely qualities and people might even agree on that. And then over time, but there you are with them. So if you really want to make the most of it, you're going to do your best to see the best. But even if that's not possible for a few years, what tends to happen is that people do grow and change. And if you stick with it for long enough, you often see a person bloom a few years later in a totally different way. And then you just come to appreciate that person for a truer sense of themselves. But the thing that's so beautiful about it, I think, is that it's just such a lesson for life, because most of us don't stay static, and it's a hopeful thing. It gives this sense that human relationships can evolve, and that given different circumstances, different influences, that a person can change, that you don't have to pigeonhole them. I just think that it's a slow burn kind of learn, and you wouldn't be able to set out to see that in a year, let's say, but that can happen over time. Have any of the rest of you ever experienced that?
I actually have. Actually, last year I started a little bit experience of that, but it definitely out to my socializing, with being able to socialize others and be able to help them out or figure them out. Last year I had a student that I didn't exactly know, but I had a really good friend of mine that I was hanging out with, and so she was trying to figure out, how can I, hang out with them or become friends with them. And finally, when I talked with her, she said, it takes time. It takes time to be able to make friends. It takes time just to be able to get yourself, just be able to socialize with others that you don't exactly know. But now, over time, we've become friends and we've become really good friends. And we've been able to socialize a lot more. And yet, she's bloomed with her way of being able to socialize with others while also making sure that they're not being like, let down or hurt. And that's sort of what I feel like is good with making friends, is just like making sure that, they're socializing, they're getting to know others that they probably haven't known, but also just being able to be together in one group and just being able to, talk with no fights, but also just like learning that. I feel like it's definitely a good thing, especially with being from Waldorf. You get a chance to socialize with others, and especially with the other grades, and just being able to do that sort of gets you to the point where you can socialize on from there, especially with, jobs or work. it gives you the chance just to be able to do that, and sort of that shows how up forward you can be, and how, you know, how much you can socialize and be able to work with others.
Very nice. Could we stay in this category of social life a little bit? And could some of you weigh in on the social preparedness you felt in moving on to a larger environment? So that's something a lot of people think about. Waldorf schools tend to be small classes. Maybe you've been with largely the same people for a while. And I know parents always think about that. What's it going to be like for my child when they go into a bigger pond? So whichever one of you would like to address that. Well, actually, Liz, you said something the other day that I loved. Actually, you said that it allows you to boldly walk through life. I just loved that statement. So I don't know if you want to continue with that idea. And I think, Isabel, you had some thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the essence of a lot of that has been already echoed. I think that, yeah, I mean, I think that it's the whole fabric of your day to day of a Waldorf curriculum is built on relationships, and so that becomes your currency in life. And I think that instead of the grade or approval or other things that may be the currency of a different curriculum, the currency is, how are you with your friends? How are you taking care of others? How is the whole group sort of moving through? And I think that, you know, that was reflected in my own education. When I got to high school, I was never sort of driven by the grade. The grades naturally came, but it wasn't that I was seeking them out. It was sort of from a curiosity that I achieved, sort of, or worked through the homework assignment or the problem. But I think that's everything. I mean, I think just you don't have to be at a Waldorf school long to see that. And I don't know where folks are coming from, but I think some Waldorf things can seem quirky and weird, and like who dances around a maypole, and who plays the recorder and maybe dances and skips, and I kid you not, these things are just so deeply joyful to a child that I know my friends and I have thought about and talked about. And there's something so lively about that, and weaving a maypole with your classmates, and also looking up. I mean, before we got on the call, where's Annie? I don't know where Annie is on the screen, but I knitted her a bag. I was in 8th grade, and I think she was entering 1st grade, and that was part of the Waldorf tradition in our school, where we helped knit a new knitting bag for a younger class. And that was so personally meaningful for me, and clearly it had an impact on her too. But just really realizing that relationships in the service of giving to others, and that there's joy in that.
Isabel, I think that maybe you can speak a little bit to the transition, not necessarily being a cakewalk, but to high school, but being successful.
Yes. So I went 8 years through Waldorf, graduated with a class of 11 with a few changes, but in the end really had a core of, I think, 11 kids going through for the last 3 years, and jumped into Falmouth Academy in 9th grade, which Falmouth Academy starts in 7th grade. So I was going into a group of people that knew each other, and it was quite intimidating for me. And I feel like I academically held my own. Sports, I gave it a try and did it and engaged with it in a way that felt meaningful to me. But I do feel like I was trying to figure out my place. And the more I grew, I said this before, the more I grew away from Waldorf, the more I was like missing those pieces where I was really able to be myself. And so despite that not being like seamless, I had a positive high school experience, and I kept going, and was able to be more in alignment with what felt good and true to me as I went on. And I think a piece of that allowed me to do that was a sense of compassion for others, as well as a sense of being patient. And I feel like the social connections that I made through my class and through my grade teacher stayed and was so strong that it was this like I don't know, it was just always there, even though I no longer saw it daily. And I remain very close with most of my class, and the parent body as well remains really close. So I feel like when you come to Waldorf, you wish for something for your child, and more often, as a parent, you also receive this sense of community and this growth. So I get excited, and like for myself as a teacher, I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is what was happening when I was a kid. And it's really exciting to see parents connecting to each other and being in that growth together as well.
I just wanted to jump back quickly and to the kind of like idea about social skills and developing those as a Waldorf student. And I was just thinking, I don't know if this is helpful or not, but I just had a practical example of how my experiences in Waldorf schools really helped me in college. Same thing with going through a group of students and having to navigate those relationships student to student. You also don't get to just switch teachers if you don't like the teacher. And I mean, not liking the teacher maybe isn't always the biggest issue, but I did have a math teacher in high school who his teaching style I could not learn. I was so stressed out. It just wasn't, I really, really liked him in other classes and as a class sponsor, but just that class didn't work. And learning to advocate for myself as a student then in a very protected environment with help from other teachers and my parents and whatever really, really paid forward. And I'm sure it'll pay forward later with future bosses and whatever, but most recently it really was applicable when I'm a music major, as I said, and there's a professor she's the only professor who teaches a sequence of music theory classes that everyone needs to take for the major. And everyone has problems with these classes. And my year of theory students, every year students drop off the track because this teacher, again, is a really great person, but there are a lot of problems with the curriculum and the teaching and the workload, and it just had become a really untenable situation. And it was really uncomfortable, and I really had to stretch myself, and the other student in the class did as well, but we had to go to the department and just different things that were uncomfortable. But I realized in the moment that I had kind of gone through this experience before, but with guidance. So that time I had the confidence to try to do it in a graceful way and in a respectful way, but also be able to advocate for myself and just have a conversation about, what wasn't working. So I don't know. I just thought maybe a practical example, or, a more literal example of what has helped me might be helpful for others.
Does anyone have anything more to say about the peer-to-peer kinds of transition from smaller environment to a larger?
I have a quick thought on that. I think it definitely was a bit intimidating to go from Waldorf to Falmouth Academy, but I think something, Bronwyn, you said earlier, just being able to navigate kind of gossip and cliques and intense dynamics in high school, I kind of just floated through that somehow. And I realize now, wow, I think that was a lot to do with Waldorf because I just didn't glom onto the stuff that people were glomming onto. And I was very social and had friends and was able to participate, but just didn't have the social anxiety and the intensity that a lot of my friends did. That's the first thing I wanted to say. And the second thing is that every space I go to, I just crave to create a community. And I think it's like the family feeling of Waldorf that every job I've gone into, I create like a club or some sort of group that gets together and really connects. And I think that is so rooted in Waldorf. And I think many of us have spoken to that tonight. But I'm kind of realizing in this moment that is Waldorf, and that so much of my purpose is in bringing people together and creating that sense of community.
Are we about out of time, or could I hop on the end of that?
Sure.
I've kind of been coming to this kind of realization throughout this evening and then what you just mentioned about family. Kind of really, okay, I'm going to say it. So I listened to a podcast recently that was given by two scientists who have been doing longitudinal studies on children, basically from birth, and they've got one study that's been going for 40 years. And one of the biggest takeaways that they mentioned was the importance of having a family structure and just, family dinners. Just your kid knowing that they have a family, whatever form that takes, knowing that there's support is really important. And if you do that, there's a lot you can do, a lot of mistakes that you can make and end up with a good kid. And I'd been thinking about that, and I realized that that's what you get when you go to a Waldorf school. You have a smaller class. You have every single class with every single student. You don't ever split up. And beyond that, you have pretty much one teacher for most of the time. Some, you may have a specialty teacher for movement, or a specialty teacher for eurythmy or something like that, but you are with the same group of people day in and day out. And it does kind of become sort of like a family, which is cool. You have that. I think that's really important. And I'm just kind of maybe realizing that now. But when I was homeschooled, obviously I was homeschooled with my family, so I really got the double whammy there. But yeah, I don't know. That's just a thought that came to me as we were speaking tonight, and I think that's really cool.
Before we end, I just want to say hi to Annie, because she was in my preschool class for a couple of years in the Waldorf School in Bourne. Hi, Annie.
Hi, it's so nice to see you.
Yeah. And Elizabeth and Rebecca, the twins, were in my marine biology class in the Woods Hole Children's School of Science. A couple of
Hi,
rats
Ellie.
they were.
Yes.
It's so great to see you all, and what a wonderful discussion. I'm seeing it as a parent and a teacher, and then seeing my grandchildren starting now. It's wonderful.
Oh, that's so nice.
How nice for you to get to see your wonderful foundational work come to fruition. That's so rewarding. That's really nice. That's great. Well, we are at 8 o'clock. I don't want to cut anyone off. If someone has a pressing question that these questions didn't answer, please pipe up now. Does anyone have anything left to say?
I don't have a question, but I also just want to say hi, and that I'm the mother of an alumni, Mark Muniz, that several of you know. And he's doing all right. He's a lovely guy. I can't say that he's so successful in all the things that he's doing, but everybody thinks he's great. So I don't, this whole self-confidence, I'm not sure, but he has tons of friends, and he is a really warm, outgoing, caring person, always wants to have everybody feel comfortable, and I'm sure that has to do with Waldorf. And I was also happy going to a UU Christmas service, and he was sitting next to me, and even though he didn't know the carols, he sang along, and I thought, that's Waldorf. That's definitely Waldorf. So I'm grateful for a lot that Waldorf has done for our son. Thank you.
Well, that just makes me think that one of the aspects of a holistic sense of life is that there's a role for everybody. So success doesn't look only one way. There's many, we all have many needs from each other for many things, and many gifts can be expressed. And I do think that is a kind of an unspoken thread that goes through Waldorf education, is just this appreciation of the whole in the person and the whole in the collective. And nobody does it perfectly, but I think it's a very worthy thing to be striving for and to be a part of. So thank you all for taking your time, and especially for the alumni for sharing. I feel like I got the double sharing, which was really, really fun for me. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Thank
Right.
you, Kristen.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good night.